Alright, so after months of stalling, the US State Department has officially come out with their statement on the Israeli assassination of Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu-Akleh, and I don't think that it'll surprise even a single person who watches my channel that the statement was not only pathetic, but effectively whitewashes the role that the Israeli security forces played in this murder. So, here from Middle East Eye, they say Shireen Abu-Akleh, the family of the slain journalist, accuses Biden of betrayal after a U.S. probe, and they say Abu-Akleh's family is calling on the U.S. State Department to rescind its July 4th statement on the killing and provide them with all of the evidence that they reviewed. So, a little bit of details here. They say the family of murdered Palestinian journalist Shireen Abu-Akleh is demanding U.S. President Joe Biden meet with them during his visit to Israel next week, which in and of itself, this trip that he's about to make to the Middle East should be considered a scandal. He's going to cozy up with Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia and basically going back on all of his campaign promises to make them into a pariah state. So might do a video on that trip in and of itself, but they continue saying they also accused his administration of skulking toward the erasure of any wrongdoing by Israeli forces following a U.S. assessment that the killing was unintentional. And they say, quote, "We, the family of Shireen Abu-Akleh, write to express our grief, outrage, and sense of betrayal concerning your administration's abject response to the extrajudicial killing of our sister and aunt by Israeli forces on May 11, 2022, while on assignment in the occupied Palestinian city of Jenin in the West Bank," the family said in a letter which was also addressed to U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. And they say, "Your administration has thoroughly failed to meet the bare minimum expectation held by a grieving family to ensure a prompt, thorough, credible, impartial, independent, and effective and transparent investigation that leads to true justice and accountability for Shireen's killing." And they say, "Meet with us during your upcoming visit and hear directly from us about our concerns and demands for justice." And they give a little bit of details here on exactly how this killing took place, saying, "Abu-Akleh, a veteran Palestinian-American journalist for Al Jazeera Arabic, was killed on the 11th of May while covering an Israeli military raid in the Palestinian city of Jenin in the occupied West Bank, and her death sparked Palestinian outrage and widespread international condemnation. And since the killing, several investigations by Middle East Eye, the Washington Post, the New York Times, as well as international bodies and the United Nations concluded that Israeli forces had in fact likely killed Abu-Akleh." And they say on Monday, the U.S. State Department released a carefully worded statement regarding its assessment of the killing of Abu-Akleh, saying that the gunfire from Israeli positions was likely responsible for the death of Shireen Abu-Akleh. However, it dismissed the incident as the unintentional result of tragic circumstances like Israeli security forces within highly militarized vehicles, parking them and basically lining up shots to assassinate this journalist. I mean, that was the circumstances that were tragic that they're talking about here. And yet, I mean, you see the different wording that they are putting forward here as if like it was the NYPD that killed Shireen Abu-Akleh. I mean, it's the exact same vague and abstract language that we hear here domestically in the United States. Whenever there is a police murder of an innocent civilian, they come out and they'll say shit like, you know, the bullet that traveled from the gun that was in the general vicinity of the police officer ended up killing this person. I mean, it's the same exact goddamn shit here. You see, they're saying that the gunfire from Israeli positions, so gunfire from Israeli positions, not coming out and saying that the Israeli security forces fired those shots, that they killed Shireen Abu-Akleh and likely intentionally killed Shireen Abu-Akleh, as was pointed out by the CNN investigation that we got. So just as a reminder here, they say they were shooting directly at the journalists. New evidence suggests that Shireen Abu-Akleh was killed in a targeted attack by Israeli security forces. And again, we're talking about CNN here, okay? Not exactly an outlet that is consistent with promoting Palestinian human rights or being critical of the Israeli government. And even CNN is coming out and saying that it was a targeted attack, meaning that they knew likely that it was Shireen Abu-Akleh, a world-renowned Palestinian journalist, and they took the opportunity that they had. And again, you look through any of the breakdowns on any of these investigations, again, the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, the fucking United Nations, you want to talk about even outlets within Israel themselves, like Betrayal, all of these different analyses that have come out in the wake of this have shown definitively that it literally would not be physically possible for any party other than these Israeli security forces to be responsible for firing the shots. And you can see it here directly on a map. This is where Shireen ended up being shot. This is the positioning of the Israeli army vehicles that were right here. direct line of fire. There were no Palestinian militants that were even in the region that could have physically fired these shots. So it definitely was the Israeli security forces. And also, just as a reminder, part of the nuance of how exactly this played out, you had Shireen Abu-Akleh with her camera crew, with the rest of her crew that was with her there, and they basically walked out into this intersection and waited there as a typical policy for these types of situations, and they stood there making sure that these Israeli security forces who were up the road had the opportunity to look at them, had the opportunity to see that they were not militant fighters or anything like that. They were wearing clearly marked press vests and helmets, and so they had the opportunity to look at exactly who they were staring down the barrel of, and they decided to fire these shots. And it wasn't something that was one or two shots fired accidentally and then they made corrections to their mistake. No, they fired relentlessly. They made sure that they hit multiple people, and they made sure that they fired lethal rounds to kill Shireen Abu-Akleh. So the idea that there is even anything up in the air or anything controversial about assigning direct blame and responsibility to Israel for conducting this killing is just absolutely insane. It's completely disgusting that they would put out a statement like this that's so vague and abstract and refusing to put accountability on the people responsible for this death. But they continue saying that the statement was rebuked by the family as well as Palestinian activists who accused Washington of trying to bury the issue by releasing its assessment on July 4th, a public holiday in the US. And they say in their letter, the family, including Abu-Akleh's brother, Anton, and his children, called on the State Department to retract their Monday statement, saying it is not based on any credible assessment, and they're 100% right. And they finish off here saying the White House, of course, did not respond to Middle East Eye's request for comment on the letter. But just to remind you guys of exactly what the position of the State Department was in the aftermath of this killing, and when they were still pretending like more investigation was needed to determine who was responsible for it. So let's just go ahead and watch this short little clip here from, I believe, AP journalist Mike Lee, who is very consistently good at pushing back against the State Department. And he was questioning Ned Price on exactly what the U.S. wanted to see in terms of accountability for this killing. So let's just go ahead and remind ourselves of exactly what Ned Price was saying at the time.
We'll talk later today.
Yes. On this situation, when you call for an immediate and thorough investigation, who exactly do you want to do that?
It is important to us that those who are responsible for her death be held responsible, that full accountability be ensured in this case.
Okay, but my question is not that. My question is who you think can conduct a credible investigation into her death that would be accepted by all parties, including the United States?
Well, in this case, I'm not going to prejudge where any investigation may go. We've seen, of course, that the Israeli Defense Forces have already announced that there is an investigation underway. We welcome that announcement. It is important to us. It is important to the world that investigation be thorough, that it be comprehensive, that it be transparent, and importantly, that investigations end with full accountability and those responsible for her death being held responsible for their actions.
Okay, but I mean, do you want the Palestinians to be involved in the investigation?
The IDF has announced an investigation.
Okay, that's the IDF.
Correct.
I standing for Israel.
That is correct.
So,
Okay, so again, credit to Mike Lee for actually providing some degree of pushback. This is what actual journalism looks like. You're supposed to be confronting the most powerful people and institutions in our government, and so I think Mike Lee does a consistent job at doing that. But, I mean, nonetheless, you see exactly what his response here was. Number one, he's saying, well, we need a credible investigation. Who do we want to do that credible investigation? Oh, we want to have the exact forces that were responsible for the murder to do their own investigation, and that's what we're going to listen to. Well, they did their own investigation, and even though they were trying to skirt accountability at basically any cost whatsoever, they came out and they basically said that yes, indeed, it was likely Israeli security forces that killed Shireen Abu-Akleh, and basically in the aftermath of that, you have these statements coming out from Ned Price, the State Department, the rest of the Biden administration, saying that they can't find a way to apply actual accountability for the people who committed this attack. And I mean, again, going back to the language they were using here, they're saying Israeli positions positions, not Israeli snipers, but Israeli positions were likely responsible for the death of Shireen Abu-Akleh. Not aware of any positions that can commit murder, but definitely individuals can. But again, they use this vague language, but they say here that it's the result of tragic circumstances. So, after coming out and saying whoever's responsible for this needs to be fully held accountable and responsible for their actions, this is the accountability that is being put forward by the United States. Just vague condemnations of somebody, somehow, some ethereal force that killed Shireen Abu-Akleh. So, completely going back against even their own statements here. And also, don't forget that in the aftermath of this murder, when they were trying to have the funeral procession for Shireen Abu-Akleh, security forces in Israel then followed up by attacking the funeral procession and almost making the people who were carrying it drop the coffin onto the ground. So, in terms of how demented this could go, I don't think that there is any low that the Israeli security forces, the IDF, will not stoop to. But nonetheless, you have the State Department and all of their various ghouls coming out and deciding that they are going to follow the Israeli security forces into the abyss and completely destroy any perceived, any perceived credibility when it comes to human rights or freedom of the press, etc. Which, not to say that they ever deserved any of that credibility whatsoever, but this is just another demonstration that they have no regard for any of those supposed underlying principles that the United States and our various empire spokespeople and propaganda artists like Ned Price claim to believe in. So, again, completely pathetic. Will they respond to the Shireen Abu-Akleh family and actually meet with them? Yet to be seen. I hope that they do, so they have an opportunity to actually confront them and begin the process of hopefully actually finding accountability for the Israeli security forces that assassinated Shireen.